A horned helmet is recognizable as Viking precisely because archaeology says it usually was not. That contradiction reveals how stereotypes survive after the evidence beneath them has failed. The familiar Viking combines raider, pagan, giant, drunkard, explorer, and racial ancestor into one impossible figure. No single medieval Scandinavian could have embodied that entire modern costume. Yet the image remains useful because it communicates danger and northernness almost instantly. Its durability began with real violence, but violence alone cannot explain 13 centuries of reinvention. Stereotypes endure when institutions keep manufacturing them for different purposes. Monastic writers supplied the earliest ingredients, though not the complete modern recipe. The attack on Lindisfarne in 793 entered Christian memory as catastrophe and divine warning. Alcuin interpreted disaster morally, asking what failings had brought punishment upon Northumbria. Such texts recorded genuine attacks while arranging them inside a Christian explanation of history. Raiders appeared most clearly when they disrupted monasteries, kingdoms, or tribute systems. Scandinavians trading peacefully left fewer dramatic sentences in those particular chronicles. That imbalance made violence more visible than farming, craftwork, diplomacy, or settlement. Even so, medieval descriptions never formed one stable stereotype shared across Europe. Frankish annals emphasized fleets, tribute, defenses, and the failures of rulers. Irish records distinguished particular groups and alliances, although their terminology changed across time. Byzantine authors encountered northern warriors and merchants within imperial diplomacy and military service. Arabic observers described travelers, traders, bodies, customs, and commerce from different vantage points. The medieval archive, therefore, contains several northern images, not one universal verdict. Later Scandinavian literature added another layer after conversion had transformed the societies remembering their pagan past. Icelandic sagas preserved social knowledge and narrative traditions, but surviving texts were written generations after many events. Their feuds, heroes, prophecies, and sharp dialogue obey literary design as well as cultural memory. Modern readers often flatten those layered works into eyewitness reports about every Viking. The stereotype became stronger when selective reading discarded legal disputes, households, poetry, and negotiation. Only the most portable features survived: weapons, ships, vengeance, pagan gods, and fearless death. Medieval memory supplied fragments, but 19th century Europe built the recognizable silhouette. Romantic nationalism searched early history for ancestral cultures that could support modern identities. Scholars collected manuscripts, classified languages, excavated graves, and constructed sweeping ethnic narratives. Artists turned difficult texts and incomplete artifacts into complete visual worlds. Opera, theater, painting, and book illustration needed costumes readable from distant seats. Horned headgear answered that visual problem better than an ordinary iron helmet. Carl Emil Doppler's designs for Wagner's Ring Cycle helped popularize horns on Germanic figures. Those designs did not emerge from Viking combat equipment found in archaeological contexts. Horned helmets were known from other periods and settings, encouraging imaginative borrowing across centuries. A costume shortcut gradually hardened into what looked like historical fact. At the same time, Scandinavian national romanticism could recast them as noble founders and seafarers. Brutal outsider and heroic ancestor were opposites, yet both depended upon simplification. Each version removed regional difference, internal inequality, and change over 3 centuries. Museums initially participated in this sorting by arranging artifacts into national evolutionary stories. However, displays could make archaeological categories resemble fixed ancient peoples. An axe behind glass easily became the defining tool of an entire society. Spindle whorls, loom weights, fishing gear, keys, and agricultural implements rarely achieved equal fame. Their quieter appearance concealed the labor that fed voyages and sustained settlements. Popular culture inherited the imbalance because conflict creates immediate characters and stakes. Silent film, historical novels, comics, advertising, and television repeatedly compressed complexity into a marketable outline. A creator could signal the Viking Age with horns, fur, fire, and a shouted challenge. Accuracy imposed costs for producers, while recognition delivered immediate speed. The stereotype, therefore, behaved like efficient visual packaging rather than a reasoned historical claim. Fur suggested cold, dirt suggested savagery, and horns suggested pagan otherness. Once assembled, the costume appeared coherent despite lacking a coherent evidential foundation. Screen stories also favor exceptional people over the social systems surrounding them. A ship becomes the possession of a charismatic warrior instead of a major investment in timber and labor. A raid becomes personal adventure rather than organized violence producing captives, tribute, and displacement. Conversion becomes a duel between gods instead of a prolonged political and social process. These reductions keep plots moving while teaching assumptions almost invisibly. Repetition during childhood gives those assumptions unusual emotional strength. Pictures learned before source criticism can feel more authentic than unfamiliar archaeological correction. Commercial branding deepens that attachment through sports teams, tourism, toys, and product names. The word Viking itself becomes an adjective for aggression, endurance, appetite, or conquest. Most such uses contain no claim about 8th century Scandinavia, yet they refresh the same associations. Political appropriation has made the problem more serious than harmless costume. Racial nationalists have selectively claimed Norse symbols as signs of imagined ethnic purity. That claim contradicts evidence for mobility, cultural exchange, intermarriage, slavery, and varied regional identities. Symbols such as runes require context because modern extremist use does not erase their older histories. It does, however, demonstrate how easily simplified antiquity can authorize modern belonging. Another force protects stereotypes through overcorrection and counterreaction. When historians emphasize traders and farmers, audiences sometimes hear an attempt to deny raiding. Raids were real, devastating, and central to many contemporary witnesses. The correction is not that violence never happened, but that violence described only part of Scandinavian activity. Likewise, recognizing women as migrants, landholders, craft workers, and household authorities does not prove every warrior legend. Evidence from graves must be assessed with osteology, context, and caution about equating objects with occupation. Nuance disappoints anyone seeking either spotless heroes or uniquely savage villains. Archaeology has nevertheless changed the picture through settlements, workshops, burials, ships, and environmental remains. At Ribe, craft debris and imported materials illuminate specialized production and exchange. Hedeby reveals a defended commercial settlement tied to roads, waterways, artisans, merchants, and political power. Farm sites expose seasonal routines that written accounts of raids seldom noticed. Silver hoards map economic connections, although a foreign coin cannot identify its owner's journey. Ship burials display elite ambition rather than an average Scandinavian life. Each category dismantles one universal Viking without replacing it with another. Public history works best when it explains why the wrong image once looked convincing. Simply removing horns leaves the deeper stereotype of a single warlike people untouched. Replacing every raider with a peaceful merchant merely reverses the distortion. Better interpretation restores choices, constraints, and unequal consequences to particular places. It distinguishes a Danish army in England from Norwegian settlement in the North Atlantic. It separates Swedish-linked Eastern travel from identities created later around the Rus. Regional precision makes the word Viking less magical but more historically useful. The stereotype's final defense is pleasure, because bold myths are enjoyable to perform. Festivals, games, and dramas let audiences inhabit an identity with clear rules and visible symbols. Historical uncertainty offers fewer immediate rewards than a helmet recognizable across a crowded room. Nevertheless, entertainment and accuracy need not remain enemies when invention is labeled honestly. Fictional character can be compelling without serving as evidence for ordinary medieval behavior. Museum replicas can visualize possibility without pretending to be excavated originals. Responsible stories can retain ships, conflict, ambition, and danger while restoring labor and consequence. What must disappear is the claim that one costume explains millions of lives. Viking stereotypes refuse to die because every age finds new work for them. Chronicles used northern attackers to explain calamity, romantics used them to imagine origins, and commerce used them for instant recognition. Modern politics can still exploit the same compressed figure, which makes source criticism a civic skill. Behind the horns remains a documented history of raids, migrations, bargains, households, and changing beliefs. The raids belong to the Viking Age, but the single-horned people belong to the history of remembering it.